appreciate everybody's time, and I certainly am very happy to take any questions.
Well, George, thank you very much. That was an excellent presentation, and Paul as well. And I do have a couple of questions. Councillor Skelly, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, gentlemen. And George and Paul, first I want to start by saying thank you for your professionalism, your thoughtful comments over the past week. During all of the media attention, you were clearly professionals, attention that was brought on you because of comments I made, and I do appreciate the way that you've handled it in the past few days. And I also want to state publicly that I am, as everyone is around this table, very, very supportive of our libraries, but we are moving through a very difficult process, and this is just the first budget that we're dealing with, and we're going to have to find savings. It's not a direct target at our library. It's simply trying to say, I've heard very clearly from taxpayers that they want us to find savings. You, unfortunately, are the first ones at the table. Doesn't mean you're not getting your 1.8% increase. It just means we are asking you to tell us why you deserve 1.8% increase. But let's shift to the presentation and some facts that really jump out. Wi-Fi use. Clearly, patrons in Hamilton and probably right across the country and in the United States are interested in access to free Wi-Fi. You have 3.95 million person visits. I'm assuming that that also includes the 1.5 million Wi-Fi visits. Okay. Yeah. So they account for almost a third of our visitors to our public libraries. With this trend growing, with more and more people seeking Wi-Fi access, how does that impact your future plans for the libraries right across the city?
Well,
George?
Sorry.
No,
we will certainly keep track of how it's being used and how also how we can work with the city. I mean, as the Wi-Fi and some of the other services we provided for access have always played off the city and some of the other services the city has offered. There historically has been a very close cooperation between how the library and the city have rolled out technologies such as that. Also, I would note some of our Wi-Fi uses actually don't necessarily show up as in our visit numbers, because sometimes people, if you go by a library branch after hours, you'll see people there in our patios, or not as much in the winter, but they're in our patios using the Wi-Fi access and using some of the other services, and so that happens as well. But I don't know, Paul, did you want to add to how we're going to address some of the changes?
Just, I think the important thing about, obviously, there's more and more demand for things like Wi-Fi, and so what the library has done is technology is getting cheaper to a certain extent, and so what we've been doing is protecting our investment in technology, not increasing it, but using the improved technology to expand services. So that's really has been the story for the last 15 years. Our technology costs have not necessarily gone up, but we're just meeting the demand through maintaining that investment.
Councillor?
Thank you. And through the chair, another, again, example of increased and actually significant increase in usage is digital streaming. It's up 22.5% over last year. What is digital streaming? What is being streamed?
George?
That is a new area that certainly even in home use. What we offer is a couple of different packages or different services that allow people to stream music legally for free. We also offer a service that Hoopla, which allows you to both stream audiobooks and even videos and movies. So sometimes older movies, not the Netflix blockbuster types, but things that are more maybe in a that you would tend to find in a I don't know, on CHCH after midnight sometimes, I don't know. And also, of course, there's different, some newer elements too. Paul, you want to add to that?
No, I think you've summed it up. So, and what we're seeing is as bandwidth is getting better, as opposed to downloads, people are streaming. And so when you get reliable bandwidth, you're able then to stream the material. And that's what the number of the platforms that we subscribe to are moving to that. So we're offering a combination of so you can stream an audiobook if you want, or you can download one. So we offer both.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And through the chair, expanding a little bit on that, when we talk about e-books, I was surprised to hear that they're more expensive actually for a library, isn't it? And is there an initiative to address the cost of licensing ebooks?
I'll start, and then Paul might have something. That's in fact, an excellent question, and it's been over the last 5 years a particularly contentious point, both in the publishing industry and with libraries and so on, and has caused some friction between those two that have often been partners in the past. And in fact, one of our past staff members, Michael Cianconi, has worked extensively in negotiating. In fact, a former chief librarian, Ken Roberts, worked extensively to try to create an ecosystem where libraries and the publishers can work together. Unfortunately, because this is a paradigm shift, a lot of publishers have looked at this as an opportunity to try to make new revenue streams and make money in new ways, and so they're almost inventing costs and issues on the fly just to see what sticks and what doesn't. And as that shift happens, it is making it difficult for libraries to be able to offer that. But we also have, between our service and others, all libraries across Canada working together, we're trying to create a playing field that really allows us to offer ebooks at a reasonable cost to our service.
Yeah, and a couple of years ago, the challenge we had were a number of publishers weren't selling ebooks to libraries, so we couldn't get titles, and that was an issue. And we pretty much addressed that issue, but pricing is still going to be a concern. And I think there is concerted efforts around the country. I'm chair of the Canadian Urban Library Council. We're working on this issue, trying to work with publishers, as George said. I think we realize the publishing industry is going through huge existential challenges, and so the library has always, public library and the other libraries have always been a good partner with the publishing industry. So we're trying to advocate for better pricing at the same time we work with our business partners in the publishing world.
Councillor?
Thank you. Madam Chair, one of, and you pointed out that employee-related costs, wages and benefits are your biggest challenge to your budget. 21 of the $29 million budget is allocated towards covering the costs of employee-related services. You have decreased your staff by, I believe, 2 full-time employees in the past year or two.
Paul?
There was FTE went down 3, and then this year we're going from 306 to 305, so 1. And we've handled all of those through attrition. But just in context, what George said, at amalgamation 2001, our overall complement was 320, and we're down almost 5% to 305. It's so we've been as we've added these new services, we've done so by shifting staff to new roles as opposed to adding to our complement. So when you saw the picture of the 4th floor and the maker space and the digital media labs, we didn't add any staff to our complement to offer that new service. What we did was we shift staff to meet that demand, and that's really has been the way that we've been able to meet city targets is by doing that. Is shifting our work to where the need is.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor?
Thank you through the chair. Automation has helped clearly. The automation of processing physical circulation, is that correct? And do you think that and maybe you can expand on it. I know you're suggesting that you're redirecting existing full-time employees, but do you think that ongoing automation will help with this burden of wages and benefits?
Well, there are certainly a number of tricks to making that work. One of the things we're looking at is as I mentioned, library hours, especially in some rural branches, are certainly sometimes very limited. So that is something that we're looking at as a possibility, because automation allows us to do that. There's some interesting pilot projects we're trying right now in Flamborough, or trying this year in Flamborough. There are obviously some countermeasures to that. For example, there's security concerns. 50 years ago, we had no problems running a library with a single person in the branch, in a rural branch. That's for security reasons, that's no longer possible. So there was always a counterbalance between the people element and the technology element. One of the things that I've been particularly proud of that we've done with technology is we, and I mentioned it earlier, we are using the experience and knowledge and background of our staff much more appropriately, as opposed to them, just processing things in and out. Now the technology does that, so they can be frontline resources. They can help in programs, they can help students researching their work, they can help show people how to use some of the new technologies that we offer. So as to whether there's opportunities for a big shift in our FTEs, I don't think so, but I think there's opportunities for us to use those FTEs much more efficiently and to be able to offer more services as people demand more from our service.
Thank you for that. Through the chair, I thought computer sessions were up. Use of the computer labs is clearly on the rise, correct? Will we need to see more, an expansion of those computer labs due to the need for them?
Well, we have been, that's something, and in fact, each time a new branch is renovated or we do some new construction, we look at that demand and have been addressing that. And this is also an area where we've used technology a lot. I could bore you for an hour about the details, but of how we do it. But there is we've used technology to be able to provide more computer services, more computer sessions at the same cost, or even a reduced technical cost through virtualization, through a lot of other technical elements. And so it's something that allows us to do more with either it's less or the same amount of money. We do look at that demand. Sometimes space is an issue. I don't know, Paul, what else you have to add on that?
No, and I think we thought that as more people get devices are getting cheaper. We expect a growth in Wi-Fi. We've seen that. We thought we'd see more of a flattening off of computer use, but that hasn't really happened. I think part of it is we now have, we've upgraded all our systems, so people are using, they're high-speed, good quality computers. So if we offer a better computer than what someone might have at home, they're more likely to use it. And what we see is when we do a renewal, we always see an increase because people are enjoying the computers. And so it's something, I don't think we're going to see a huge growth in it. What George is referring to about the computers is we virtualized our computers so that the support for them is, the processing all happens in the central. We have a shared data room with the City of Hamilton, and the processing happens in there and the updates get pushed out to the computers, and so there's a lot less moving parts in our computers, so they're a lot more reliable. So.
Councillor?
Thank you, Madam. Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the chair, and you brought up CHCH-TV. I wasn't going to bring it up, but 65 years worth of video archives that we have to preserve, but that is not cheap. That's an expensive undertaking. Are you looking for additional funds through the feds, through maybe National Archives?
We're always looking for additional funds from many partners. I know one of the things, and on that one specifically, I'll have Paul answer that, but I know any project comes up, we also look at what partners we can leverage. Sometimes, for example, $1 million of our budget is covered by the provincial government. Last year, $400,000 was covered by the federal government with their announcement of infrastructure work and so on. We're looking to leverage off of that. So there is always that, and even locally with school boards and partnerships and so on that we can do. And that project in particular.
Yeah, and we have a very dedicated retired CHCH employee who is actually spending a lot of his own time actually doing the work with our support. So we are looking for, always looking for additional funds for our digitization efforts. I think it's interesting, we're involved in trying to advocate for that at the federal government in terms of their culture strategy, and so we will continue to pursue that. And I think the digitization is going to happen when we can get an increase in funds from higher levels of government or from outside. That just accelerates the process and enables us to move forward.
Councillor?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and this is really a shout out to our federal members of Parliament that if this is something that they should be looking for funding for. I mean, I really think this is beyond a Hamilton initiative. It's something that has national significance, and I'd love to see funding through the National Archives because it will be very, very expensive. Paul, we had spoken about this offline, and it is if you were directed to operate with a smaller increase, let's say from 1.8 to 1%, where and how would you find those savings? And in your opinion, what are the pitfalls that we have to be aware of?
Well, this is something that has actually come up in the past at the library board, because certainly over time, and I've been on the library board 15 years now, but it actually seems a lot less, but one of the things that has come up occasionally when we've dealt with things like pay equity or particularly tough years after amalgamation where we had a lot of cost to absorb, is we had to take a look at, what would library service look like if we had 1% or 2% less in our budget, and those are extremely difficult questions, and there is no a simple answer to the question, because if we were put into that position, we would look very closely at the types of communities that would have to be affected, and we'd have to make the tough decision, seniors or youth or rural branches or the branches in hard-served neighborhoods. I mean, those are there's no right answer to that, and so it's one that even when in the past when we've had to look at that question, I believe in one year council asked us to come up with two budget numbers and ask us what it would be if we came in with 0 instead of our 2%, and all we can say is the effect would not be invisible. They would affect services. It would affect certain elements of the community, and as a library board, we'd have to decide which of those parts of the community would be affected. But that would be a very difficult and long process.
Councillor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Paul, we spoke about how it didn't work, or some examples in Europe where they made mistakes in terms of slashing and burning. Maybe you could speak to that?
Sure.
Paul, please.
And that's where the board adopted in 2011 a statement on sustainability, and that if the library was faced with cuts, that it would be balanced between technology, staff, library service, collections. And the reason for that is when you look at what has happened to libraries, particularly in the United Kingdom, where there was cuts, and then in some cases libraries we're just going to slash our hours, or we're going to slash staff, or we're going to slash collections. And whenever you do that, you undermine the overall service. You need a combination, a balanced investment in those areas. And so when you start to say, it's easy, let's just cut our collections budget, that's how we'll meet the budget target. What you end up doing is you undermine the overall use. So that's what we want to try to avoid. And maybe just the other thing that I'd just like to point out, which is that we work very hard. The reason why we're at where we are today is because we plan ahead. We work year after year with the library board. Our staff are our greatest resource. They're helping people every day. And so I think the thing for us is that we really need to plan ahead. If we have to make reductions in staffing, which we've done it through attrition. And I think that's very important, so that it would be better that we plan ahead and work on changes over time, as opposed to, having to deal with laying off our dedicated employees.
Councillor?
Thank you, and thank you for that response. And I do have one question for Mike Zagaric, if I may.
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, and that is, why do we separate the capital budget from the operations budget for the Hamilton Public Library?
Mike?
So, through you, Madam Deputy Mayor, the previous 2 years we did refer the capital budgets for boards and agencies to the boards and agency presentations. What we found problematic was when Council approved some amendments to those capital budgets relative to what staff assumed that Council approved in December of the previous year as part of our capital budget process. It caused a lot of disruption in having to revise our policies as well as our tax rates. And so in order to complete the capital budget process without amendments and disruptions and amending the tax rates, Council now approves the capital budget as a whole. So for 2017, there were 2 library capital projects that were approved. I believe it was the Greensville and the Valley Park library projects, and they were multi-year 2017 to 2019 projects. So again, those 2 projects were approved. The city contribution, just in excess of $3 million, is to be debt financed.
And the capital budgets are approved by council in December, so long before the boards and agencies present. Councillor Skelly?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mike. And thank you, gentlemen, for those answering all those questions. And again, I appreciate how professional and thoughtful you have been regarding all of the media attention that you've received in the past week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Aidan John.